The silver ship appeared over Mars Colony 7 without warning. It moved through space like a giant knife cutting through black cloth. The colonists looked up through their dome windows and saw something that made their hearts stop beating fast. Elena Rodriguez was playing in the hydroponic gardens when the alarm started screaming. She was 12 years old, with dark hair and bright eyes that always asked too many questions. Her father worked as the chief engineer for the colony. Her mother taught the younger children in the small school they had built. "Elena, come inside now," her mother called from the dome entrance. Maria Rodriguez tried to keep her voice calm, but Elena could hear the fear hiding underneath. The ship was bigger than anything Elena had ever seen. It was 3 times longer than the colony's main building. Strange blue lights ran along its sides like veins carrying alien blood. The metal looked smooth and perfect, like it was made from liquid silver that had been frozen in space. Captain Torres, the colony leader, tried to send messages to the ship. He used every frequency they knew: English, Spanish, Mandarin, and even the basic math signals that scientists said all smart life would understand. The ship did not answer. It just hung there in the red Martian sky like a dark cloud before a storm. Elena pressed her face against the garden dome's thick glass. She watched smaller ships break away from the big one. These ships were shaped like teardrops and moved without making any sound. They dropped down toward the colony like silver raindrops falling in slow motion. "They're landing," Elena whispered. The first beings that stepped out of the ships looked almost human, but not quite right. They were taller than any person Elena had ever seen. Their skin was pale blue-white like ice, and their eyes were completely black with no white parts at all. They wore clothes that seemed to be made of the same silver metal as their ships. Elena's father came running into the garden. His work clothes were dirty with engine oil, and his face was red from running. "Elena, we have to go, now." But it was too late. The aliens moved faster than any human could. They spread out through the colony like water flowing into every corner. Elena saw them pointing strange devices that looked like crystal wands at the colonists. When the blue light from the wands touched people, they fell down and did not move. "Sleep devices," Elena's father said through his teeth. "They don't want to hurt us. They just want us to stay still." Elena's mother grabbed her daughter's hand. "Run to the emergency shelter. Go through the back tunnels like we practiced." Elena started to run, but the garden dome filled with blue light. She felt her legs become heavy like lead. Her eyes started to close even though she fought to keep them open. She heard her parents screaming her name, but their voices sounded far away, like they were calling from the bottom of a deep well. The last thing she saw before the sleep took her was one of the tall beings walking toward her. It moved with smooth steps that made no sound. Its black eyes looked at her like she was something interesting it had found in a laboratory. Elena woke up in a place that was not Mars Colony 7. The walls around her were made of the same silver metal as the ships. Soft lights in the ceiling gave off a white glow that hurt her eyes. The air tasted different, like it had been cleaned too many times. She was lying on something that felt like a bed, but looked like a cloud made solid. Her clothes were gone. Instead, she wore a gray suit that felt warm, but looked like it was made of liquid that had turned into cloth. Elena sat up and looked around. She was in a small room with no windows. There was no door that she could see. The walls were smooth and perfect, with no cracks or joints where pieces had been put together. "Hello?" Elena called out. Her voice echoed strangely in the small space. "Can anyone hear me?" A section of the wall disappeared like it had never been there. One of the tall beings walked in. This one was different from the others Elena had seen. It wore robes that changed color as it moved, shifting from blue to green to purple like oil on water. The being looked at Elena with those terrible black eyes. When it spoke, the words came from everywhere at once, like the room itself was talking. "You are awake. This is good. You will not be harmed if you cooperate." "Where am I?" Elena asked. "I want to go home. I want my mom and dad." "You are aboard a research vessel of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire. Your location is not important. Your parents are not relevant to your situation." Elena felt anger rising in her chest like hot water boiling over. "They are relevant to me. Take me back to them right now." The being tilted its head like a bird looking at a worm. "You misunderstand your circumstances. You have been selected for study. Your species shows interesting characteristics that require investigation. You should consider this an honor. I don't want to be studied. I want to go home. What you want is not a factor in this decision. Your species is primitive and has no standing in galactic law. You are, in legal terms, a specimen. Elena's hands made fists. Her father had taught her never to back down from bullies, even big ones. I am not a specimen. I am Elena Rodriguez. I am a human being. The alien made a sound that might have been laughter, but it was cold and empty like wind blowing through a graveyard. Human being. Yes, that is what your species calls itself. It is amusing how all primitive species believe they are important. The being moved closer to Elena. She could smell something sharp and clean, like the air after lightning strikes. You will be well treated. You will be given food appropriate to your biology. You will be studied in ways that cause minimal discomfort. When the research is complete, you will be relocated to a suitable environment. What kind of environment? A preservation facility. Your species will need protection from the realities of galactic civilization. Consider it a form of sanctuary. Elena felt cold fear creeping up her spine like ice water. You mean like a zoo? The comparison is not entirely inaccurate. Elena stood up from the cloud bed. She was small compared to the alien, but she straightened her shoulders the way her father did when he had to deal with difficult problems. My people will come looking for me. The being's black eyes seemed to grow even darker. Your people lack the technology for interstellar travel beyond your immediate solar system. They lack the military capability to challenge even our smallest patrol ships. They lack the political standing to make demands of the Empire. Elena lifted her chin. You don't know humans very well. We know enough. Your species has been observed and catalogued. You are resourceful for primitives, but you are still primitives. You fight among yourselves. You waste your resources. You are driven by emotions rather than logic. The being moved toward the wall. You will be given time to adjust to your circumstances. Compliance will make this process easier for you. The wall opened again and the alien walked through. Elena ran toward the opening, but the wall became solid again before she could reach it. She pounded her fists against the smooth metal until her hands hurt. Let me out, she screamed. Let me go home. But the room stayed silent except for the soft humming of alien machinery. Elena slid down the wall and sat on the floor. She pulled her knees up to her chest and tried not to cry. Her father always said that crying was okay, but thinking was better. So Elena thought about her parents, about Mars Colony 7, about Earth, and about what the alien had said. They thought humans were primitives. They thought humans would do nothing. They thought wrong. Elena might be trapped in this silver prison, but she was still Elena Rodriguez. She was still human, and somewhere, her people were probably already planning to prove just how wrong the Zephyrian Galactic Empire could be about primitive species who cared about their children. The message from Mars Colony 7 reached Earth 18 hours after Elena Rodriguez disappeared. It traveled through space on radio waves that carried the desperate voices of parents who had watched their child taken by beings from another. World Director Sarah Kim of the United Earth Space Command sat in her office in Geneva and listened to the recording for the 5th time. Maria Rodriguez's voice cracked as she described the silver ships and the tall beings with black eyes. Engineer Carlos Rodriguez spoke with the careful precision of a man trying to hold himself together while his world fell apart. They took Elena, Maria's voice said through the static. They took our little girl and we don't know where they went. Please, Earth, someone has to help us find her. Sarah Kim had been director for 7 years. She had dealt with asteroid mining disputes, colony supply shortages, and pirates in the outer belt. But she had never dealt with this. No human had ever dealt with this. She pressed the button for her assistant. Get me President Chen Wei on the secure line. Then contact every member of the Security Council. Emergency session in 2 hours. Ma'am, it's 3 in the morning in Beijing. Wake 'em up. Wake all of them up. Tell them we have a Code Black situation. Code Black was the classification for first contact with hostile alien species. It had been created by paranoid military planners who thought too much about bad possibilities. Sarah had always hoped she would never need to use those words. President Chen Wei's face appeared on the screen 40 minutes later. His hair was messy from sleep, but his eyes were sharp and focused. Behind him, Sarah could see aides running back and forth with papers and tablet computers. Director Kim, I've been briefed on the Mars colony situation. Do we have confirmation that this was an alien abduction? Yes, Mr. President. We have video recordings from the colony's security system. We have witness statements from 37 colonists. The ships and beings match no known human technology or biology. President Chen was quiet for a long moment. Sarah could hear typing in the background as his staff worked through the night. Director Kim, I need you to be very clear about something. Are you telling me that aliens came to one of our colonies and kidnapped a 12-year-old girl? Yes, sir. That is exactly what I'm telling you. President Chen's face became hard like stone. Then God help them. The emergency session of the United Earth Security Council convened at 800 Geneva time. Representatives from every major nation and colony appeared on screens around a circular table. Sarah had never seen so many powerful people look so shocked and angry at the same time. Prime Minister Hassan from the African Federation spoke first. Do we have any way to contact these aliens? Any diplomatic channels? Sarah shook her head. We've been broadcasting on every frequency we know. Standard mathematical sequences, basic pictographs, even recordings of human music and art. Nothing. They don't seem interested in talking. What about tracking? Asked President Martinez from the South American Union. Can we follow their ships? Our best sensors lost them at the edge of the solar system. They're using technology we don't understand, faster than anything we have. The Brazilian representative, General Santos, leaned forward. Director Kim, in your professional opinion, what are we dealing with here? Sarah took a breath. She had been dreading this question. Based on their technology and behavior, we appear to be dealing with a spacefaring civilization that views humans as inferior. They took Elena Rodriguez like we might collect a sample from a primitive tribe. They don't see us as equals worthy of negotiation. Silence filled the room like cold water. Finally, President Chen spoke. Ladies and gentlemen, we are facing something unprecedented in human history. An alien species has committed an act of war against humanity by kidnapping one of our children. The question before us is simple. What do we do about it? The Russian President Petrov was the first to answer. We find these aliens and we get Elena Rodriguez back. Whatever it takes. Agreed, said Prime Minister Williams from the British Commonwealth. No one takes our children. One by one, every representative said the same thing. The vote was unanimous. Not just to rescue Elena, but to send a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity protects its own. President Chen stood up from his chair. Then we are in agreement. Operation Elena is now our highest priority. Director Kim, you have whatever resources you need. Money, materials, personnel, whatever you ask for. Mr. President, with respect, we don't have the technology to fight aliens who can travel between stars. We can barely get supply ships to Mars on a regular schedule. President Chen smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had made a decision that would change everything. Director Kim, you're thinking too small. We don't need to fight them with what we have. We need to become something they never expected us to become. The transformation began within hours of the Security Council meeting. Orders went out to every corner of human civilization. Research facilities that had been studying theoretical physics suddenly had unlimited budgets. Military contractors received contracts for weapons that existed only in imagination. Mining operations in the asteroid belt were told to strip every rock they could find and send the materials to Earth. Dr. Jennifer Walsh was working late in her laboratory at the European Space Research Center when her phone rang. She was a theoretical physicist who spent her days thinking about impossible things like faster-than-light travel and artificial gravity. Dr. Walsh? This is Director Kim from Space Command. How quickly can you turn your theories into working technology? Jennifer almost dropped her phone. Director Kim, my work is purely theoretical. We're talking about concepts that might not be possible for centuries, if ever. Dr. Walsh, aliens took a human child. I need you to make the impossible possible. You have unlimited funding and whatever support you need. How long? Jennifer looked around her small laboratory filled with computers and equations written on whiteboards. She thought about Elena Rodriguez, a girl she had never met but who had become the most important person in human space. Give me 6 months, Director, and pray that I'm smarter than I think I am. Similar conversations happened around the world. Weapons designers who had been told their ideas were too dangerous suddenly found themselves building prototypes. Engineers who had dreamed of impossible ships were given construction facilities the size of cities. Computer programmers who played with artificial intelligence were asked to create digital minds that could think faster than any human. The news media tried to understand what was happening. Factories that had made cars and computers suddenly switched to making things that had no names. Universities emptied as professors and students were recruited for classified projects. Ordinary citizens found themselves working overtime in jobs they didn't fully understand, building components for machines they weren't allowed to see. But everyone knew why. Everyone understood the mission. Elena Rodriguez was somewhere in space, alone and afraid, in the hands of beings who saw her as nothing more than a laboratory specimen. She was 12 years old. She liked to read books about space exploration and dreamed of becoming an engineer like her father. She helped her mother teach younger children and always shared her lunch with kids who forgot to bring theirs. She was human. She was one of theirs, and they were going to bring her home. President Chen Wei appeared on television screens around the world 3 months after Elena's disappearance. He stood behind the podium in the United Nations building in New York. Behind him hung the flag of Earth, a blue and green circle on a field of stars. "My fellow humans," he began. 3 months ago, aliens came to our solar system and took one of our children. They believed we were too primitive to stop them. They believed we were too weak to find them. They believed we would forget Elena Rodriguez and accept that she was gone forever. President Chen paused and looked directly into the camera. Sarah Kim, watching from her office, saw something in his eyes that made her shiver. They were wrong about us. They were wrong about what humans will do to protect our children, and they are about to learn that hell hath no fury like humanity united in purpose. The broadcast ended, but the message was clear. Earth was no longer the same world it had been before Elena Rodriguez disappeared. Something new was being born in the furnaces of human determination, something that would make the stars themselves take notice. The Zephyrian Galactic Empire had taken a human child. They thought they were dealing with primitives who would do nothing. They were about to discover just how wrong they could be. 6 months had passed since Elena Rodriguez disappeared into the black depths of space. On Earth, something extraordinary was happening, but it was happening in silence. Dr. Jennifer Walsh stood in what used to be the Nevada desert and watched her impossible dream take shape. Where once there had been empty sand and rocks, now there was a construction site that stretched to the horizon. Thousands of workers moved like ants around structures that seemed to defy the laws of physics. The gravitational field generators are online, her assistant, Dr. Park, reported as he approached with a tablet computer. "We're getting stable readings across all test platforms." Jennifer nodded but didn't take her eyes off the construction. 3 months ago, these machines had existed only in her imagination. Now they were real, built from materials that had been mined from asteroids and assembled by the finest minds humanity could produce. What about the propulsion systems? Dr. Morrison's team finished the first prototype yesterday. Initial tests show we can achieve 0.7 light speed without the ship tearing itself apart. Jennifer allowed herself a small smile. When Director Kim had asked her to make the impossible possible, she had thought it would take decades. But humans, it turned out, could do remarkable things when they had the right motivation. Elena Rodriguez was the right motivation. Across the world, similar miracles were happening in secret. In the mountains of Switzerland, weapons designers were creating devices that could tear holes in space itself. In the factories of Japan, artificial intelligence systems were being born that could think 1,000 times faster than their human creators. In the shipyards of Luna, vessels were taking shape that looked like nothing humanity had ever built before. The ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They were long and sharp like knives made of starlight. Their hulls were made from materials that could repair themselves and change shape during flight. Their weapons were hidden inside the smooth metal, waiting to emerge when needed. Captain Maria Santos had been chosen to command the first ship. She had been a fighter pilot before Elena's kidnapping, one of the best in the Solar Defense Force. Now she stood in the bridge of a vessel that made her old fighter look like a child's toy. "Systems check. All stations," she called out to her crew. "Navigation ready, Captain," reported Lieutenant Chen from his station. "The new AI navigation system is fully operational." "Weapons systems green," announced Commander Okafor. "All energy cannons and missile systems responding." "Engineering reports all power systems stable," added Chief Engineer Rodriguez. He was Elena's uncle, and he had volunteered for the mission the day construction began on the ship. Captain Santos looked out through the bridge's main screen at the stars beyond Earth's orbit. Somewhere out there, a 12-year-old girl was waiting for rescue. Somewhere out there, an alien empire was about to learn what happened when you made humanity angry. "Take us out, Navigator." Silent running protocols. The ship moved away from Earth without making a sound. Its engines produced no visible exhaust, no energy signature that alien sensors could detect. It was a ghost ship carrying the hopes and fury of an entire species. Elena Rodriguez had been in her silver prison for 6 months. The days blended together in the artificial light of her cell. The Zephyrian researchers came regularly to study her, running tests that didn't hurt but made her feel like a laboratory rat. She had learned some things about her captors. They were an old species that had ruled their part of the galaxy for thousands of years. They believed they were superior to all other life forms. They collected specimens from primitive worlds the way humans might collect insects. The researcher who visited her most often called itself Zekmor. It wore the changing robes of a high-ranking scientist and spoke to Elena like she was an interesting puzzle to be solved. "Your species continues to surprise us," Zekmor said during one of its visits. "Your brain activity shows patterns we have not seen in other primitive life forms." Elena sat on her cloud bed and stared at the alien with steady eyes. "We're not primitive. We're just different from you." "Different, yes, but primitive nonetheless. Your people still fight wars over resources. You have not achieved unity of purpose. You are driven by emotions rather than logic." Elena thought about her parents, about Mars Colony 7, about the blue and green world where she had been born. Being driven by emotions isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes emotions make us do things that logic can't. Zekmor tilted its head in that bird-like way. Such as never giving up on someone you love. Such as fighting impossible battles because they're the right thing to do. Such as making sure no one else has to go through what I'm going through. The alien made its cold sound that might have been laughter. "Your people have no way to find you. Even if they could, they lack the technology to challenge the Empire. Your emotions, as you call them, are meaningless in the face of reality." Elena smiled, and something in that smile made Zekmor take a step backward. "You don't know humans very well, do you?" Back in human space, the transformation continued in absolute silence. Earth's governments had imposed a complete communications blackout. No messages were sent to other star systems. No diplomatic overtures were made to possible alien contacts. Humanity had become invisible, a ghost species that worked in the darkness between stars. The mining operations in the asteroid belt had been expanded beyond anything previously imagined. Entire asteroids were being disassembled, and their materials shipped to hidden construction facilities. The workers moved with the focus of people who knew they were building something that would change history. Dr. Sarah. Kim stood in the command center, buried deep beneath the Swiss Alps, and watched displays that showed the progress of humanity's greatest project. Ships were being built in hidden shipyards. Weapons were being tested in empty regions of space. Training facilities were turning ordinary humans into something the galaxy had never seen before. "Status report," she called out to the room full of technicians and officers. "Fleet construction is at 60% completion," reported Admiral Thompson. "We'll have 300 ships ready for deployment within 6 weeks. Weapons testing? All systems are performing beyond expectations. The reality disruption cannons are particularly impressive. Personnel training? Our people are ready, Director. They know what they're fighting for." Sarah nodded and looked at the largest display screen, which showed a picture of Elena Rodriguez taken before her kidnapping. The girl was smiling in the photo, her dark eyes bright with curiosity about the universe around her. "She's been gone for 6 months," Sarah said quietly. "She's been alone and afraid while we've been building our response. I hope she can hold on a little longer." Admiral Thompson moved to stand beside her. "She's human, Director. She'll hold on." They always underestimate what humans can endure. Elena was indeed enduring. In her silver cell, she had developed routines that kept her mind sharp and her spirit strong. She exercised every day, doing push-ups and sit-ups and running in place. She recited poetry her mother had taught her. She solved math problems in her head and designed engineering projects like her father had shown her. Most importantly, she remembered who she was. Elena Rodriguez, citizen of Mars Colony 7, daughter of Earth, member of the human species that had crawled up from primordial oceans to reach for the stars. The Zephyrians thought they had captured a specimen. They had actually captured something much more dangerous, a symbol, a rallying cry, a reason for an entire species to discover what they were truly capable of when united by love and fury. Elena didn't know about the ships being built in her name. She didn't know about the weapons being created to bring her home. She didn't know that every human in the solar system was working toward the single goal of her rescue. But she suspected. Every time Zekmore seemed surprised by her responses, every time the alien researchers exchanged glances she wasn't supposed to understand, Elena felt a warm certainty growing in her chest. Her people were coming. She didn't know how and she didn't know when, but she knew they were coming. Humans didn't abandon their children. Humans didn't accept the unacceptable. Humans did impossible things when someone they loved was in danger. The Zephyrian Galactic Empire thought they were dealing with primitives. They thought they had taken a specimen from a species too weak to respond. They were about to learn the difference between primitive and unpredictable, between weak and quietly preparing for war. Elena Rodriguez sat in her silver prison and smiled a human smile full of faith in her species. Soon, she thought, soon the whole galaxy would understand what it meant to threaten a human child. The silence was almost over. The preparation was nearly complete. And when humanity finally revealed what they had been building in the darkness, the stars themselves would tremble at the sound of their fury. Admiral Zarketh of the Zephyrian Third Border Fleet was enjoying his morning meal when the impossible happened. His flagship, the Eternal Dominion, was patrolling the outer edges of Empire space when every sensor on the bridge started screaming at once. "Admiral," his sensor officer called out with confusion in his voice. "I'm reading massive energy signatures approaching from unknown vectors. Configuration unknown. Speed impossible." Admiral Zarketh moved to the command center with the casual confidence of a being whose species had ruled this section of space for 3,000 years. "Show me." The main display lit up with readings that made no sense. Ships were approaching from 12 different directions at once, moving at speeds that should have torn them apart. They were small by Empire standards, but they moved like living things, shifting and flowing through space in patterns that hurt to watch. "How many ships?" the Admiral asked. 37, sir." "No, wait, 42. The number keeps changing." Admiral Zarketh felt the first whisper of concern touch his mind. "Changing how?" "Sir, they appear to be splitting into smaller units, then recombining. It's like they're made of liquid metal." The Admiral studied the display. In 3,000 years of naval service, he had never seen anything like this. Open communications. Standard Imperial greeting. The communications officer worked at his station for several moments, then looked up with confusion. "Sir, they're not responding to any standard protocols. They're broadcasting on a frequency I've never seen before." "What are they saying?" "It's in a language the computer doesn't recognize." "But Admiral, the emotional content is registering as pure hostility." "Admiral," Zarketh was about to ask another question when the unknown ships opened fire. The weapons that struck the Eternal Dominion were unlike anything in the Empire's vast military database. Instead of energy beams or kinetic projectiles, the human ships fired bursts of twisted spacetime that bypassed shields entirely and struck the hull directly. The flagship's armor, which had been designed to withstand the strongest weapons known to galactic civilization, crumpled like paper. Emergency alarms filled the bridge as sections of the ship simply ceased to exist, leaving perfectly smooth spherical holes where solid metal had been moments before. "Damage report," Admiral Zarketh shouted over the noise. "Hull breaches on 17 decks. We've lost propulsion and 40% of our weapon systems." Admiral Zarketh stared at the tactical display in disbelief. His flagship, the pride of the Third Border Fleet, had been crippled in less than 30 seconds by weapons that shouldn't exist. "All ships engage the enemy. Full defensive formation." The Third Border Fleet had destroyed civilizations and conquered star systems. 200 ships of the line moved into battle formation with the precision of a military force that had never known defeat. They lasted 4 minutes. The human ships moved through the Empire formation like sharks through a school of fish. They were everywhere at once, impossible to target, impossible to predict. Their weapons cut through Empire shields and armor like they weren't there. Worse, they seemed to learn from each exchange, adapting their tactics in real time. Captain Maria Santos stood on the bridge of her ship, the Elena's Hope, and watched the enemy fleet crumble before humanity's fury. Around her, her crew worked with the cold efficiency of people who had trained for this moment for 18 months. "Target the command ship," she ordered. "Full spread of reality disruptors." "Aye, Captain." "Firing now." The weapons that struck Admiral Zarketh's flagship were born from humanity's greatest minds working in perfect cooperation. They didn't just destroy matter, they unraveled the fundamental forces that held atoms together, leaving nothing behind but empty space and the echo of broken physics. The Eternal Dominion, flagship of the Third Border Fleet, ceased to exist. Admiral Zarketh found himself floating in an escape pod, watching his entire fleet die around him. Ships that had seemed invincible were being torn apart by forces he couldn't understand. The enemy moved with a purpose and fury that chilled his alien blood. As his pod systems automatically sent a distress signal toward Empire space, Admiral Zarketh tried to understand what was happening. These ships, these weapons, this level of coordination, it was impossible. No primitive species could have developed such technology. No known civilization in the galaxy possessed these capabilities. The last thing he saw before his pod jumped to hyperspace was one of the human ships moving directly toward him. It was beautiful and terrible at the same time, like a knife made of starlight and rage. For just a moment, he thought he could see something written on its hull in strange symbols. If Admiral Zarketh had been able to read human languages, he would have known what those symbols said. Elena Rodriguez, we're coming. The destruction of the Third Border Fleet was only the beginning. Within 6 hours, human ships appeared at 3 more Empire outposts. Each attack followed the same pattern. Sudden appearance, overwhelming firepower, complete annihilation. The human forces took no prisoners, accepted no surrender, and left no survivors to tell their stories. The Empire's military command had never experienced anything like this. Enemy forces that appeared without warning, struck with impossible weapons, and disappeared back into the void. Intelligence officers who had analyzed threats for centuries found themselves staring at tactical reports that made no sense. Fleet. Admiral Kothmar received the emergency reports in his command center on the Empire capital world. He was the highest military authority in Zephyrian space, a being whose strategic brilliance had conquered dozens of civilizations. How many ships have we lost? He asked his staff. 732, Admiral. 4 entire border fleets, 3 major shipyards, 12 research facilities. Admiral Kothmar studied the tactical displays with growing alarm. The attacks were too precise, too well coordinated. Someone had detailed intelligence about Empire operations. Someone knew exactly where to strike for maximum damage. Do we have any identification on the enemy ships? No, sir. They use technology that doesn't match any known civilization. Our databases have no record of anything like these vessels. What about survivors? There are none, sir. The enemy appears to be following a policy of complete elimination. Admiral Kothmar felt something he had never experienced in 3 centuries of military service: fear. Get me a priority communication to the High Council. Tell them we are under attack by an unknown force with capabilities that exceed our own. Elena Rodriguez woke up in her silver cell to the sound of alarms. For 6 months, her prison had been filled with the quiet humming of alien machinery. Now emergency lights flashed red, and she could hear raised voices in the corridors outside. Zekmore burst into her cell without its usual calm composure. The alien researcher's robes were flickering rapidly through colors, and its black eyes were wider than Elena had ever seen them. What is happening to your people? Zekmore demanded. What have they become? Elena sat up on her cloud bed and smiled. It was the first genuine smile she had worn in months. I told you that you didn't know humans very well. This is impossible. Your species lacks the technology for interstellar warfare. Your ships cannot even leave your solar system. Elena's smile grew wider. You're right. 6 months ago, we couldn't leave our solar system. But you made a mistake when you took me. What mistake? Elena stood up and walked to face the tall alien directly. Even though Zekmore towered over her, she felt no fear. For the first time since her capture, she felt hope burning bright in her chest. You united us. For the first time in human history, you gave us something that made every person on Earth work toward the same goal. You made us stop fighting each other and start fighting for each other. The alarms grew louder, and Elena could hear the sound of running feet in the corridors. You thought emotions made us weak, Elena continued. But emotions are what make us strong. Love for our children, fury at injustice, the absolute refusal to let evil win without a fight. Zekmore backed toward the door. Your people are destroying everything. They show no mercy. They accept no surrender. Elena's eyes, her father's eyes, burned with a fire that made the alien flinch. Did you show me mercy when you took me from my parents? Did you accept their surrender when they begged you to let me go? The research facility shuddered as something massive struck its outer hull. Through the walls, Elena could hear the distinctive whine of human plasma cutters beginning to slice through alien metal. They're here, Elena whispered. My people are here. Zekmore fled from the cell. leaving Elena alone with the sound of humanity's fury cutting through the darkness of space. She pressed her hands against the wall and felt the vibrations of her rescue growing stronger with each passing moment. Somewhere in the facility's corridors, human soldiers were moving with the deadly precision of people who had traveled across the galaxy for one purpose: to bring their daughter home. The Zephyrian Galactic Empire had taken a human child. They had thought they were dealing with primitives who would do nothing. Now they were learning what happened when humanity stopped being civilized and became something the galaxy had never seen before. A species united by love and unleashed by rage. Elena Rodriguez closed her eyes and listened to the sound of her rescue approaching. Soon she would see human faces again. Soon she would hear human voices calling "Yay." Elena Rodriguez saw her father's face for the first time in 18 months when the door to her silver prison melted away like ice in summer heat. Chief Engineer Carlos Rodriguez stood in the opening wearing armor that looked like it had been forged from starlight itself, and his eyes were filled with tears that he didn't try to hide. "Elena," he whispered, and then she was in his arms, holding on like she would never let go again. Behind her father, Elena saw more humans in the same gleaming armor. They moved with the deadly grace of soldiers who had fought their way through an entire alien research facility to reach this moment. Their faces were hard and focused, but when they looked at Elena, their expressions softened with the relief of a mission finally completed. "Are you hurt, little star?" her father asked, using the nickname he had given her when she was small. Elena shook her head. "I'm okay, Papa. I knew you would come." "I always knew." Captain Maria Santos appeared in the doorway, her armor scorched from battle but her eyes bright with victory. "Mr. Rodriguez, we need to move. This facility won't survive much longer, and we have more Empire ships approaching." Elena's father lifted her in his arms like she was still a small child. "Then let's go home." The journey through the research facility was like traveling through the aftermath of a hurricane made of human fury. Elena saw the results of what happened. When her people finally stopped being patient and became something the galaxy had never encountered before. The walls were decorated with perfectly round holes where human weapons had simply erased sections of alien architecture. Empire security forces lay motionless in the corridors, their advanced armor no match for weapons born from 18 months of focused human innovation. Everything was silent except for the sound of human boots on alien metal. "How many ships did you bring?" Elena asked as they moved toward the facility's docking bay. Captain Santos smiled grimly. "All of them." Elena looked through a window as they passed and saw what the captain meant. Space around the research facility was filled with human ships as far as her eyes could see. They hung in the darkness like angry stars, their hulls gleaming with weapons that had rewritten the laws of physics to bring her home. The human ships were beautiful and terrible at the same time. They moved like living creatures, shifting and flowing in formations that seemed to dance through the void. Elena had never seen anything more wonderful in her life. "Welcome aboard the Elena's Hope," Captain Santos said as they entered the ship's docking bay. "We've been waiting a long time to meet you." Elena looked around at the ship that bore her name. It was filled with humans who had spent 18 months building something impossible for the sole purpose of bringing her home. Scientists and engineers, soldiers and technicians, all united by the simple principle that no human child should be left behind. "Thank you," Elena said, and the words seemed too small for everything she felt. "Thank you all for coming to get me." Chief Engineer Rodriguez, Elena's uncle Miguel, appeared at the docking bay entrance. His face was wet with tears as he hugged his niece. "Elena, we have someone who wants to talk to you." They took Elena to the ship's communications center, where a wall screen showed the familiar face of President Chen Wei. Behind him, Elena could see the flags of Earth and Mars and every human colony in the solar system. "Miss Rodriguez," President Chen said with a smile that lit up his entire face. "It's good to see you safe. The entire human species has been worried about you." Elena felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what had been done in her name. "Mr. President, I don't understand. How did you do all this? How did you build these ships so fast?" President Chen's expression became serious. "Elena, when they took you, they united humanity in a way that had never happened before. Every nation, every colony, every human being worked toward the same goal, bringing you home. We discovered that when humans truly work together, we can accomplish anything. What happens now?" Now we teach the galaxy something they should have known from the beginning. Never threaten a human child. The lesson began immediately. High Chancellor. Morthek of the Zephyrian Galactic Empire stood in the great assembly hall of the capital world and tried to comprehend reports that seemed to describe the end of everything his civilization had built over millennia. 17 fleet commands have been destroyed, his military advisor reported. 43 research facilities eliminated. 112 colonies under siege. The enemy shows no signs of slowing their advance. Chancellor Morthek studied the tactical displays with growing horror. Red markers showing destroyed Empire forces stretched across vast regions of space. In 18 months, an unknown enemy had crippled military forces that had taken centuries to build. Do we know what they want? Yes, Chancellor. They sent a message 3 hours ago. The message appeared on the main screen. It was simple and direct, written in several Empire languages. Return Elena Rodriguez. Surrender those responsible for her capture. Accept human terms for reparation. You have 24 hours to respond. Chancellor Morthek stared at the words. Elena Rodriguez? Who is Elena Rodriguez? His advisors exchanged glances. Finally, one of them spoke. Chancellor, our records show that name belongs to a primitive specimen collected from the Sol system 18 months ago. A juvenile member of a species called humans. The Chancellor felt the world shift beneath his feet. Are you telling me that this entire war, this destruction of our fleets, this threat to our civilization, is because we collected one specimen from a primitive world? It appears so, Chancellor. Chancellor Morthek looked at the red markers covering the tactical display. Each one represented thousands of Empire lives lost to human fury. Send a message to the human fleet. Tell them we wish to negotiate. Chancellor, we don't negotiate with primitives. It would set a precedent that could destabilize our entire system of galactic order. The Chancellor turned to stare at his advisor. Look at those displays. Look at what these primitives have done to us. Our galactic order is already destabilized. The Imperial delegation arrived at the human flagship 12 hours later. They expected to meet with military commanders and government officials. Instead, they found themselves facing Carlos and Maria Rodriguez, Elena's parents, flanked by President Chen Wei and Director Sarah Kim. High Admiral Vex Koth led the Empire delegation. He was a being accustomed to commanding respect from lesser species. But when he looked at the humans across the negotiation table, he saw something that made his confidence falter. These were not the faces of primitive beings awed by Empire power. These were the faces of parents who had watched their child, taken by strangers, and had responded by building a war machine capable of bringing the galaxy's greatest civilization to its knees. We are prepared to discuss terms. Admiral Vex Koth began. The Empire recognizes that mistakes were made in our handling of your citizen. Maria Rodriguez leaned forward. Her name is Elena. She is not a citizen or a specimen. She is our daughter. Of course, we are willing to provide compensation for the inconvenience. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. President Chen Wei spoke with a voice like ice. Admiral, I don't think you understand your situation. This is not a negotiation between equals. This is you accepting the consequences of your actions. Admiral Vex Koth tried to regain control of the discussion. The Empire has ruled this region of space for 3,000 years. We have protocols for dealing with primitive species. We cannot simply abandon our established order because of one incident. Carlos Rodriguez stood up from his chair. His engineer's hands were steady, but his eyes burned with 18 months of fury. You call kidnapping my daughter an incident? You call torturing a 12-year-old girl for your research an incident? Elena herself appeared in the doorway of the negotiation room. She was 18 months older now, no longer a child but not quite an adult. Her experience as a captive had left her with wisdom beyond her years and strength that impressed even hardened soldiers. Hello, she said to the Empire delegation. I'm Elena Rodriguez. I believe you've been looking for me. Admiral Vex Koth stared at the young woman who had become the catalyst for his civilization's greatest crisis. She was small by Empire standards, but she carried herself with the confidence of someone who knew the entire human species would move mountains to keep her safe. Miss Rodriguez, the Admiral said carefully, the Empire regrets any discomfort you may have experienced during your stay at our research facilities. Elena smiled, and there was something in that smile that reminded every human in the room why they had built impossible ships and fought impossible battles. Admiral, I spent 18 months as your prisoner. Your scientists treated me like a laboratory animal. Your researchers studied me like I was a specimen in a jar. And you call it discomfort? The Admiral had no answer. Elena continued. But that's not the worst part. The worst part is that you never understood what you were really dealing with. You thought you were taking one child from a primitive species. You never realized you were declaring war on a species that will cross the galaxy to protect their young. President Chen Wei placed a document on the table. These are the terms. Non-negotiable. Admiral Vexkoth read the terms and felt his world crumble. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.